Okay, so hi guys, welcome to Hatikva News and thank you for joining. I am Hope and I am here today talking with Stacy SEGAL and she will be joining us now. Hi Stacy.
Hi, Hope. It's great to be here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm born and raised in South Florida. I was born in Mount Sinai Hospital. I grew up on the mean streets of Aventura, Florida. And I have a stepmother who was born in Israel. I have a brother that served 6 years in the IDF voluntarily. He made Aliyah. And I have most of my family here. My brother that was in the Army is now in Africa on a security detail. And I have family in Montreal. My stepmother's there, and my other brother, and most of the other family is in South Florida, with the exception of my brother who's in Manhattan, my full brother, Ben.
Everyone's all over the place.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
That is the Jewish diaspora, isn't it, in a
it
nutshell?
is. And that's the
Yeah.
extended blended family.
Amazing. Amazing. So I know you've been doing a lot of work since October 7th. How was October 7th for you? What were the feelings and how have we overcome since then?
So we're not out of the woods yet. It's more important than ever that there's no complacency, any person, Jewish or not, to continue doing their part, being vocal and speaking out when there's injustices, whether it's the actual news media, it's journalists such as the New York Times, Washington Post, podcasts, posts on Instagram, TikTok, what have you, that everyone is called out because we may be winning the war and maybe able to win the war, the Israeli people I'm referring to in Israel, but that does not mean that we're winning the war on public opinion. We are losing that war, and it's quite scary.
It is, yeah, actually, I saw something recently that for every one pro Israel post, there's three pro, I don't even want to say pro Palestine, but like pro Hamas, even. It's that 1 to 3 ratio. Very similar to the hostage prisoner exchange ratio, actually, strangely.
Isn't that interesting? Yes, that
Yeah.
we're told that we should have nothing and be happy, that the one per three. And all I've seen so far, quite frankly, is fuzzy math. All of the people that Israel is releasing are literal terrorists and criminals, from what I've seen, and have been jailed for various crimes. And innocent women, children, and men who were literally at the wrong place at the wrong time are hostages. So I don't see the equivalency there. And no one has been able to, in print or on the news, able to explain that correctly to where I understand that being a fair exchange of hostages.
Oh, yeah, because they're just calling it a prisoner swap.
Right.
It's ridiculous. That's what they're
Well,
calling
to
it. And
swap,
that's
you would need an actual prisoner with a prisoner to have a swap. So
right.
that's why, yes, I'm quite perplexed at that statement, right? The prisoner swap or whatever. They can't even call it a hostage swap because it's not a hostage for hostage situation either.
Right, right. Um, so, do you want to tell us a little bit about your mission that you've been working on?
Sure. So I started a group called Never Again Is Now on Facebook. It's gaining momentum slowly because it's a private group that I have to admit each person into. And the good thing and the bad thing is, while I don't have 1,000 members yet, it's only friends, friends of friends, close family. There's no spamming because everyone is accountable and everyone knows one another. So if anyone wants to find that, it's Never Again Is Now on Facebook. I may expand into postings on, let's say, Instagram or do a YouTube channel. For personal reasons, I will not do anything TikTok related because it's pure poison and should be banned from the US entirely. And you know why.
Yep, I sure do. I agree. And actually, I was working to delete my TikTok as well. I haven't used it in so long. I can't remember the password. And so it won't let me delete it. So I'm going to have to take some time and reset the password and then try to delete it, but I too do not want to use TikTok. Yeah. Yeah.
It's that's where the biggest. So that's a great starting point as far as our discussion of social media and the poisoning of this conflict on the American people and people worldwide. So, who uses TikTok? Those are, let's say, obviously the 12-year-olds are not going to be looking at the Israel Hamas conflict, but let's say the most people who are tweeting are in the 16 to 32 range. Those are the ones absorbing and disseminating the information. What that means is you have a bunch of people who have grown up on, I need to get as many likes and clicks and retweets as possible. That is my only agenda. I want to work doing nothing and be an influencer. I don't have to read any article. I don't have to read any books. I don't need any historical knowledge. I just need to get as many clicks and likes as possible so people will follow me. And how can you have a wonderful information source when that is the majority of the people that are both putting that information out there and that are also receiving the information? So now you'll see there's thousands, if not, God forbid, millions of people who are propagating all this propaganda, and they are repeating it. And I should say a more appropriate word is regurgitating it, because they know not what they say, what they speak, and what they're looking at or listening to. So and so said it. I mean, the most disturbing lately, you've seen the people who have championed the manifesto of Osama bin Laden. I mean, in what planet is that okay and not taken down immediately? It wasn't just one person, it was several. I'm very perplexed as to why that became a trend, but more importantly, and this is why I am not a fan of TikTok, this information is continued to exist and to be perpetuated.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody that was posting those selfie videos about the letter to America and their response to it, I was shocked and I wasn't at the same
Right.
time. You know, sadly, I was like, yeah, it makes sense that they're just going to fall into this trap, right? Because it's a trap.
But I don't think people understand that these are unprecedented times. So it'd be like, oh, that's cute. That's a little something that they shouldn't be saying, and that's not really accurate. No, it's 100% inaccurate information. It is incendiary. It is dangerous, and it can't continue to exist and to be perpetuated. So that's why it's so important. And I don't know why the U.S. government, if they have the authority and power to do so, which I believe they do, does not just say, hey, this is not good for our children for a myriad of different reasons, especially since the conflict, it's exacerbated how important it is to ban TikTok in the U.S. I don't understand why the U.S. government, if they have the authority, does not just ban it here. Because as we know, what the Chinese children are seeing and what the U.S. children are seeing are two totally different things. The Chinese are looking at chess tournaments and panda videos, and we're looking at all this propaganda.
It's so true. It's so true. Pandas.
That's her
Funny.
national, you
Yeah.
know, bargaining chip. They're adorable, but that's probably more
No,
of what
but
the
you're right.
Chinese
You're
see.
right, though. No, they are very focused on education, and we here are getting our education from social media, it seems. And so there are a lot of us now that are a little late to the game. I was having a conversation with Ellie about this the other day, but doing La Hospira work, and that is the education and trying to explain to people what the truth is and really getting the truth out there. And a lot of us should have started sooner. There were a lot of people doing it sooner. But I started after October 7th. October 7th really, really shocked me. My grandfather survived the Holocaust. So seeing what was happening in Israel, and not only that, but I am Israeli. So seeing my friends just in so much pain and harm and just everything that happened on October 7th, I was like, wow, this story has to be told. And we were promised never again. And then here we are again. And in the little trailer I made, I even said, we asked the world for help, and what did we get? And in return, we got these massive pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas protests. And on college campuses, just complete anarchy. And they are not peaceful protests. There's a lot of things that we can protest as Americans, and they're supposed to be peaceful, and they're supposed to be nice demonstrations, and we have the right to do that. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. A lot of these protests are like screaming fire in a crowded place to cause mass insanity and to incite violence. That is what I see from this. And I don't think that these sort of things should be allowed, especially on college campuses.
Well, you firstly are completely correct, because this all starts from the ground up, right? So let's say grade school, or let's say middle school. And then, one would think, and it's hilarious, because all of my friends are not like this that went to these Ivy League schools and the second tiered schools. You would think, oh, it's the best education. It's $60,000 a year for undergrad. Right? I'm going to get like Madeleine Albright and all these people as my teachers. You can't get better than this, Cornell West. And then you see the indoctrination, and again, with the misinformation. And all I can say to that is, I expect better of you. Do better, be better. And I also expect the universities, if they see this going on, it has to be nipped in the bud straight away. It cannot be like, let's wait for 4 protests. Like, why? No, the first protest that got off the rails should have been ended immediately. There should have been a letter that went out to every parent and every student. This will not be tolerated on this campus. We're happy to refund you your money. Get out. That's what should have happened. And instead, I just see this like slap on the wrist for Rashida Tlaib. And I see some people having the chutzpah to rescind their money, their donor money, and take their kids out. But if you are a Jew or non-Jew and you see what's going on, I truly do not understand how you will continue sending your kids there, or consider sending your children to a university such as Cornell after what's happened at Harvard. They don't have one anti-Israel, pro-Palestine group. They have 34 at Harvard. That's remarkable, not in a good way.
Right. Well, and so, you mentioned how, they think that they're getting taught by these great educators. And we saw one of those educators at a pro-Palestinian rally say that he was joyful and like excited about the massacre on October 7th. And yes. Where was he? Do you know off the top of your head which university he was a teacher for? But he was indeed a Ivy League university teacher, educator at one of these pro-Palestinian protests, applauding how well Hamas did on October 7th. And that is not uncommon. We're seeing a lot of these teachers. We're seeing a lot of these law groups within the colleges. They were putting out different promotional things and so much support of Hamas. And, everybody wants to free Palestine. And they're saying that, we need to support Palestinians. I would love to free Palestine from Hamas. Hamas is a brutal dictatorship.
Yes.
So, great idea. Let's free Palestine. But these people need to understand what it is that they are protesting for, what it is they're chanting. Half of these people, more than half, don't even know what intifada means. And they're out there screaming for the intifada. Just complete idiots. And you're right. They are paying $60,000 a year to get an education. And clearly, they're not learning a lot. And whatever they are learning is complete BS. And I don't have the figure in front of me, but there are massive amounts of donations from Qatar and Middle Eastern countries all over the world funding our university systems. And
Well, as we talked about before we went live, it would be amusing if it wasn't so tragic. It's such a great place, and it's so coveted. The West Bank, Gaza, and the Palestinian territories and land they went back. Where do the head of Hezbollah, ISIS, and Hamas reside? Not
yeah,
in Gaza. Not in
nope,
Gaza.
nope.
It's
Yeah,
such a
and if
wonderful
anyone has
place.
seen my videos, you know I say it all the time. They live in Qatar. Yes, they do. They live in Qatar.
And
And their
so
children are safe. Their
right.
children are safe. Their children are going to Ivy League schools. These leaders are flying around in private jets,
Yes.
and they are corrupt. They're stealing all the money. They're worth $11 billion. The top two leaders of Hamas are worth $11 billion, and the Gaza people are suffering. And it's tragic. It's tragic. Gaza could have been Singapore. It could have
Yes.
been Hong Kong. It
Yes.
really could have been. But their leadership is corrupt. And that's not the fault of an Israeli occupation because we haven't been there since 2005.
Right. That's what is
So,
so interesting, that the lie and the narrative is perpetuated. There's so many disturbing things about this where people do need to remain vigilant and act on them. Like I said before, whether it's a tweet on X or it's a posting, or like we said, Gigi and Bella Hadid, their father's Palestinian. That's great. It hasn't been a problem up until now. His name is Mohammed Anwar. Anwar is the son. And Mohammed was born in Palestine, whatever. And his children, who literally only because their parents threw millions of dollars at plastic surgeons and PR teams, that is the only reason those two are on the cover of Vogue or whatever. They are now literally with an eighth grade education, if that, spewing hatred and misinformation and being very anti-Israel. They could not find Israel on a map. I promise you that. And it needs
so
to
you know,
stop.
yeah, no, they are ridiculous. They really are. They do not know what they're talking about. They are also inciting violence. And I saw something recently that their father might actually be Israeli Arab.
He
So,
was born, yeah. So it's like a disputed territory because the father's like super old, like for how young they are. He's like 70 something. So
yeah, yeah.
you have to look, it's like Bethlehem, like what was that in 1950? You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's kind of a disputed territory where he was born. So it says Palestinian if you look on his Wikipedia, which is not always accurate, but it could still be Israel. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, but Golda Meir was also Palestinian.
Right. So
You
it's
know,
like
there
it's
were,
like splitting
yeah.
hairs. In any event, I feel like they went to a Tony Beverly Hills school because they both were born of privilege, immense privilege. And it was one of those schools, instead of going to a private school where you get the best education, college prep, it was oh, your father's paying $28,000 a year for you to go to sixth grade. We're just going to pass you on all your classes. It was more of the latter, I think, that those two had for their upbringing, and as well as their brother.
Yeah, and then they started modeling really young and they got all that plastic surgery and just blew up into the celebrity atmosphere. And, you know, there's a lot of celebrities right now that are either silent or they're pro Palestinian. Uh, Interesting, Susan Sarandon has really lost her mind.
She has. She was
Uh,
dropped from her agency. The thing is, they can say whatever they want. It's a free country, but you have to have repercussions, and you cannot spread false, incendiary, dangerous information without repercussions. You want to be a kook, Susan Sarandon? Great, your agency's dropped you. You're not going to get a movie as long as you live with that. So there has to be repercussions. There's a change.org petition right now for Gigi and Bella Hadid to be, not to say more on them because they don't deserve our airtime, but there's a change.org petition right now I signed, which is to get them out of IMG models. So we just have to keep doing whatever we can. If you see it, report it. The Miami Herald, it was despicable. They had a recent, in the last week, an article, I kid you not, it said, here's what from the river to the sea really means because the Palestinians are all peaceful and blah, blah, blah. I couldn't believe it. I got a lot of likes on that, but I also still got, and I don't care anymore what people think or do with respect to social media with me, but they had a bunch of people again, free Palestine in there. Oh, thank God someone's speaking up. There was so much again incendiary language and I wrote in there, I swear to God, I wrote, wow, the amount of people paid to post pro-Palestinian rhetoric is shocking because I did it on purpose. And I told my friend, I have this friend that's very big with politics in Miami Beach, and I won't say his name, but he's on board with me and us. And I was just like, so and so, should I write to the paper directly because I can't have this happen? And the point being with this anecdote is if you see something, you have to say something. You cannot remain silent. I don't want to say silence is violence and get all, have these sound bites or whatever, but you do have to say something and do something because to your point, Hope, too many people are remaining silent. Amy Schumer got so much flack she really didn't even say much. She's just like, I stand with Israel or whatever. And she got more flack than most. And I just find it so interesting. Someone, Orthodox whose wife converted to Judaism, such as Sacha Baron Cohen, crickets, barely said anything the last few weeks. Have you heard anything from Sacha Baron Cohen? I haven't.
I didn't, but he did. He did do something. He did do something. He was maybe speaking at the UN. Was that where he
Recently
was?
he said something, but it was like it took him a long time. And
Oh, it did.
And it wasn't like what I expected from someone who I thought he was. And I think he's a very talented actor and extremely brilliant with Ali G and Borat and all that. But I was just shocked. And that's what we're all of us, everyone seeing and listening to this, yourself included probably, is just so shocked at the silence and the ignorance of everyone else. And I'll be honest with you, I have non-Jewish friends, Jewish, all around the world, Muslim, Christian, Jewish. I don't expect everyone to text me, how are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. But the amount of people who, let's just say I invited to the group, nothing, they're not in the group. I thought you were supporting me as a person. This is just a pro-Israel thing. You can't just click join. Like that's a big hurdle for you. So I can see that because a lot of my friends from a long time ago that I've had since childhood are all posting this like repeatedly. We keep inundating you with this information because we can't be silent anymore.
Yes. My Jewish friends too, and I'm doing it too. All of us. We are all posting as much as we can because nobody else is. And so that's why you're seeing every Jew in the diaspora, for the most part. There is a small percentage of Jewish people that aren't, and we can maybe get into that later. But for the most part, every single Jewish person in the diaspora is speaking as loud as they possibly can on every single social media platform they possibly can. And that's also why I started this YouTube channel. So more of us can talk and connect and have a large international diaspora dialogue and try to connect all of the dots between all of us. Because really, back to our main point, never again is right now. We are seeing it in the streets. We are seeing it on college campuses. We are seeing it globally. Yes. And the massive amounts of anti-Semitism. In the video, the trailer that I played when we started, that was Samantha Wall and Paul Kessler. They both died in America the past month in anti-Semitic attacks. Now, I do want to point out that supposedly Samantha Wall's death was not an anti-Semitic attack. But I don't believe that for 1 second. I think that the news is doing a horrible job. Listen, the police, they tried the best they can. But there's no way that just for some reason, this leader of a temple who worked in politics was just randomly stabbed outside of her home for
we had
not being Jewish. Like, no, that was an anti-Semitic attack. And then so also was Paul Kessler. And both of them lost their lives for being Jewish in America this past month. We also saw a woman get brutally attacked, and then I think she also did die in France, right? The food
Ireland,
delivery.
the one that well, there was a woman, and Ireland went crazy because Ireland has a very unique and different culture. But so there was an Algerian man of Muslim descent that just went nuts and started stabbing this woman and her two children. Thank you. She died. The children so far are living, and then they broke out into protests in Ireland. There could be France too, because France has a serious, as does England, a serious problem with immigration, which we can talk about later. And France has been doing an adequate job, I roll, but not great. Paris with the riots. London has done an appalling, abysmal, embarrassing job as far as the protest. And I have this posh woman who has a lot of followers. She owns her own magazine. She's English and Jewish, and I constantly go on her page and I say, "When are you Londoners? When are you English people going to do something?" It's just she'll post, "Oh, this is appalling." Okay, well, you live there. This is your country. You're English. You're British. Do something. If you're a Londoner, then protest. Go to the mayor's office. Whatever that equivalent is for your country and for your city. But I mean, it's it's appalling, because if you look at the Anti-Defamation League, there's 316 anti-Semitic attacks. This time last year there were 64. Is that a coincidence? I
No,
mean,
no.
316 to 64.
Yeah. And you know what I saw recently too? The BBC was told that they weren't allowed to report the anti-Semitism, the anti-Semitism rally.
They weren't allowed
And
to attend. They were not allowed to attend.
they weren't allowed to attend, they weren't allowed to report it, and even the Jewish people who work for the BBC were told that they couldn't go.
Yes, that's
So
right.
they're reporting, but they're reporting all the other news. They're reporting the pro-Palestine marches, they're reporting everything else, but then they won't report this?
Well, one quick thing about the BBC, which is important to mention, when they erroneously reported essentially that the Gaza City hospital was just bombed all of a sudden. It was 100% Israeli. It was all Israel. It turns out it's Hamas. It was all them. They had the rockets. They have the people underneath. They harbor terrorists. They harbor the leaders. And then they retracted, I believe it was something within 3 to 5 days. But what people don't understand, the damage had already been done. No one looks at retraction statements. They look at the headlines. They read a paragraph if you're lucky. They watch a soundbite for 30 seconds if possible. But they've done a terrible job, and
Yeah.
a real disservice to the Israeli people and everyone that reads, or I should say that watches the shows that they have. They've done a disservice too. But again, it's not just that; it's the repercussions. There are none. I mean, what if everyone? I'm just throwing this out there. If every employee that disagreed walked out, you can't go to the march on Sunday. Okay, we're out of here. How are you going to run a news organization? You
Yeah.
got to start
If
thinking outside the box instead of. But the English way, unfortunately, is proper. And we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. This is not a time for hurt feelings. Do not hurt feelings to be considered when you are reporting important information, which are facts.
yes. Yes. I do want to go backwards for just a second. You talked about Ireland. Ireland, yes, a complete anarchy, crazy what's happening there. There really was a woman, I believe she died, but she was attacked in her home in France for being Jewish through the food delivery service. She thought she
Wow.
was getting her food delivered. She opened the door. I believe it was the food delivery guy.
Wow.
Yeah, I might not have all of the facts straight, but this did happen. It did happen, and this was at, like, pretty much the beginning of this conflict, I'll say,
I
mid to
believe it.
end
I just
October.
my brain is flooded with information, so it's
Yeah.
very possible because France has had a serious problem. What happened was, starting in the 70s and 80s, the two prime ministers, the heads of France, were François Mitterrand and Jacques Chirac. And they allowed everyone, you're from Algeria, you're from Tunisia, you're from anything, Morocco, you can all just come here and that's fine. And that's great. And that was magnanimous, very generous of them at the time. Well, they came to France. They had not one child like the average right now French person has, real French Catholic from France. They had 5 and 6 kids. They're not on actual an employment program. They're on a government is going to subsidize me program. And then they live in the banlieue, in the peripheries. So literally, it's a war zone. You cannot, like, police know you cannot go to, like, banlieue is just like a favela, like a bad area, like a suburb of Paris, I guess is the best way. They're just little pockets because Paris is so expensive. People can't live in Paris. And so I totally believe that happened, that the person was stabbed, because now you're having a situation in France where, well, Paris specifically, and Marseille has a problem for some reason, maybe because they have a lot of Jews, but Marseille has had over the last few years, if you look into it, some anti-Semitic outbursts and things of that nature. So something needs to be done, and it's up to these countries to do something about it.
Yeah, and the UN isn't going to be any help now. The UN has completely been dismantled. The UN is gone. It was supposed to be a way for the world to somehow manage world order. And now the leader of the Humanitarian Rights Watch for the UN is Iran? Like, how did that happen? It's just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. But back to anti-Semitism, there are, not to laugh, but, I mean, sometimes we just gotta laugh, because this stuff is crazy. But, you know, everywhere. Miami, New York, DC, London, Paris. I'm sure there's other places, but we are seeing Star of Davids being drawn, spray painted, graffitied. We are seeing Nazi symbols spray painted, graffitied at cemeteries and on walls in general, just all over cities and towns. And these pro-Palestine marches are not chanting for peace. They're chanting for intifada. And in case anybody doesn't know what intifada is, it means violence. It means attacking. It means killing, and it means being a martyr. Martyrdom is where they blow themselves up. They are suicide bombers. And so anybody out there at a pro-Palestinian rally chanting intifada, you are calling for anarchy and mass chaos. So some of these people really need to get their heads on straight. And sorry, I went off on a little tangent there, but it makes me mad. It makes me mad that these people are so uneducated.
I don't blame you. I can't imagine what you and your family are going through, and how much, because, you know, people, unfortunately, we're not the best at geography, we Americans, but, you know, it's a very narrow, it's a long, very narrow country, and it's not a very large country. And people, I don't know how many maps we need to show them that, you know, they're not calling for destruction of some Jews or some Israelis. Like, no, we want Israel off the map. And if you're not Islam, if you're not with Islam, you get with our program, you get out. So what people also need to realize is, if you're gay, if you're Christian, if you're Catholic, you're not on our train, the Hamas people are saying.
So that brings me to, I wanted to read us something.
Please.
About the Judeo-Christian calling for the dismantle of Judeo-Christianity. Right. So the Mufti, and Hitler, they were best friends. Hitler actually gave the Mufti, his name is Haj Amin al-Husseini. I showed him and Hitler together in the trailer. Hitler
Yes.
actually gave him honorary Aryan. So the
Why
whole
was
thing with the
that?
Nazis,
Why was that?
they wanted the Arabs to have full control over the Middle East because they had similar ambitions, which was destroying the British, destroying the communists, and destroying the Jews.
Yes.
So they were best friends, and they came up with a plan to continue world hatred and world domination together.
Yes. It's very scary.
Yes. And so they instigated revolutions and the formation of the Arab Legion. And I'm not going to read this whole article. I will post it in the link for us at the end of this if anybody watching this wants to go read this article. But it is insane, and it's the truth, and it is why there cannot be peace in the Middle East like people want, because the Arabs are educated to be martyrs and to die for Palestine and just to continue this extreme violence and to continue the legacy of Hitler and the Nazis. This is what they're doing. And what's crazy too is when you see all this anti-Semitism, they're calling the Jews Nazis.
That's what I'm talking about, the ignorance, the lack of education, the ignorance, and then that's just fed back to them with going on TikTok. It's absolutely mind-boggling how much disinformation is out there.
I also just want to point out that at the time, there were 1.7 million Arabs living in Syria, Transjordan, Iraq, and the British Mandate of Palestine. Okay? So anybody who thinks that a genocide has been happening to these people is so wrong and ignorant, because in Gaza and West Bank combined, there's over 5 million Palestinians now, Arabs
so, Hope,
now.
that brings me to a point. Hope, you are
Yeah.
Israeli. So can you explain to me how, since we gave back the West Bank in 2005 to the Palestinian people, Gaza to the Palestinian people, how has their population exploded, the Palestinians, instead of diminishing? Do you have an answer for that? Because they're saying that we're just...
It has.
I know.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it has. Okay, so when the Israeli Defense Force physically dragged every Israeli out of Gaza, they had to drag them out of Gaza because the Israelis were like, this is our home. We literally built our home. We built these greenhouses. This is where we live. We're not leaving. So the IDF literally had to drag them out. And there was actually some confusion. I don't want to use the word confusion, but there was some worry. There was some worry that maybe the IDF wouldn't listen to the orders from the government. They were worried that maybe it wasn't going to work. But ultimately, it worked. We pulled out every single Israeli, Jew, anybody Israeli was pulled out of Gaza. We completely withdrew from Gaza, and Gaza became their own area, their own independently run. They wanted to be self-determined, so we gave them Gaza. They have massively grown, and the reason that we also know this is because half of the population in Gaza is children.
Right.
So that's proof positive that the Gaza population has completely expanded and grown, and there is no genocide on the people of Gaza. Now, yes, are there some problems in Gaza? Yes, of course there are. There's problems in every area of the world. No place is perfect. But most of the problems in Gaza are because Hamas are corrupt leaders. and they steal all the money. So is
Right.
UNRWA. This UNRWA run nonprofit, the UN, it's a disaster. The education is a disaster. They're supposed to have billions and billions of dollars for the people of Gaza. And these people of Gaza don't have anything. And so everybody wants to blame Israel for this, but it's not Israel's fault. And yes, there is a siege on the border, but they still get stuff, right? It just has to go through checkpoints because we don't want them to be getting explosives and rockets and things like that. But don't worry, they pulled up all of their water pipes to make rockets. So they figured out a way to make rockets anyways. And then also, you have a ton of people coming from Gaza into Israel to work every day.
But not the other way around.
So Hamas completely
Not the other way
ruined it.
around. It's only one-sided. One-sided for hospital care, one side to work. It doesn't work the other way because if Israelis go to the Gaza Strip side, the West Bank, they're told with signs and everything, they will be shot. They can
For
be killed.
Area A. For Area A in the West Bank, that is true. So listen, people want to talk about free Palestine. And listen, there are many, many contentious debates about Area C in the West Bank. We do have settlements in Area C. That's also where we have a lot of archaeological and historical sites. It's still part of Judea and Samaria. It's still where Jewish people come from. So there are like 500,000 Jews that really want to live in Area C of the West Bank. If people want to walk around with signs that say, remove the settlements from Area C, hashtag Free Palestine, okay, then you are being factual and then you are chanting for something. But what they want is from the river to the sea, which, as you mentioned, is the entire state of Israel.
Yes.
And, there's a lot of people right now that are doing a great work. Kosher Dills is one of them. If anybody wants to go follow Kosher Dills on Instagram, I'm going to give him a shout out. He's great. And he's walking around with a microphone trying to talk to people. And he's like, okay, so, you want people to, from the river to the sea, free Palestine. Okay, so where's everybody inside of Israel going to go? And they're like, oh, they should just go home. It's like, well, okay, one, that is home. And two, we're seeing this global anti-Semitism everywhere, which just proves the point of why Israel needs to exist in the first place. Why it does exist.
Yes, 100%.
Mind-boggling. But yes, Kosher Dills is great. He's interviewing a lot of people. His Instagram is awesome. And he is just showing the idiocy in all of this. It is just idiotic. It is crazy. These people are so uneducated. And I wouldn't mind having a debate or a conversation with somebody who is educated and who's somebody who does want Area C to be free for Palestinians. Great, let's talk about that. But somebody who's like, well, from the river to the sea, we got to free Palestine. It's like there's no way to talk to that.
Right. There's no, as they say, there's no there. I can't work with that. You know what I mean? You can work with Area C. Okay, I want to see them proliferate and whatever, but you can't work with someone that calls for the annihilation of Jews and or the Jewish people. You just can't really debate with that because you don't have anything to work with. And if they're so indoctrinated and they're so brainwashed, you just can't debate with people unless they have an education and they can, communicate properly.
Right. I was just reading over this article again, just double checking. We sort of got on a tangent and off track. I just wanted to see if there's anything else I wanted to add about this article. I am going to post it for you guys so you can read it. It's really interesting. But, pretty much overall, the Grand Mufti and Hitler were BFFs, and it is causing a serious problem to this day. The entire education system in the Arab worlds is toxic. It's toxic and it's child abuse. And I just want to point out that Who's that brilliant guy? He's like a scientist. What's his name? Oh
Neil
my
deGrasse
gosh.
Tyson. Neil deGrasse
Yes!
Tyson.
Did you
Yes.
see the thing? Did you see what I'm talking about?
He's on my S list and it doesn't stand for Stacy. I didn't see it recently, but he's been saying some, for him, who's a brilliant man, very uneducated, ignorant things lately. I don't know specifically of what you speak.
So, something that he did say that I found very interesting was like way back in the day when the Jews and Christians and Arabs all lived together in Arabia, there was a lot of science and math happening, a lot of astrology happening, a lot of thought processes happening, a lot of learning, a lot of education. And I saw him speaking about this in particular. It's actually the only thing I've seen him speak about. So if you want to send me some stuff that
We'll
I
look
should
into
know
it.
about, let me know. But I
Okay.
thought that was really interesting, and it does make a lot of sense because of course humans in general are very intellectual beings. And if they
Right.
aren't completely suppressed by Islamic jihad, then there's plenty of room to grow as humans and to talk and have expansive ideas and conversations. And sadly, now that does not happen because women aren't allowed to go to school, really. They have to be covered from head to toe. And
Yes.
these men are taught to be martyrs and grow up as martyrs and then suicide bomb. So, where are we supposed to go from here? And then the rest of the world, for some reason, is like, yay, we love these people. They're oppressed. Free Palestine. It's like the entire Middle East is Muslim except for this little area, tiny little area of Israel.
You have a lot of people, I'm speaking about the US right now, who have a lack of education, a extreme laziness. They were raised on screens. They're going to continue to be on screens that are the future leaders. Wait for that.
I'm
And you
scared.
have, you should be, as you should be.
Yeah.
And these people, if you'll notice, a very important point that this guy I follow, journalist Andy No, NGO, with the real Andy No, at real Andy No on Instagram. Just look at this and you can't unsee it. The same people that were having the mostly peaceful protests at Chop Chaz, Antifa, then it's Black Lives Matter, thieving grifters, where's money, who has been saved, who has been helped by Black Lives Matter. Any people want to talk? Oh, no one. Okay. Are the same people that are pro Hamas. So it's transference of one cause to another. Again, knowing nothing, not having the education, not having the background or the history. Let's just break things and light things on fire and call it a day.
And that Black Lives Matter movement, that woman stole all that money too. You know, there's these.
$6. Yeah, she had $6 million at the time of the dissolution, dissolving of Black Lives Matter, which they quietly went away with no repercussions. She had, that we know of, Patrice Cullors, who was the founder, one of the founders, $6 million in real estate that we know of.
So it's crazy because there's all these people that want to help, that give money, but they don't know where it's going. They don't really understand who they're giving it to. They don't follow up on it. And then a lot of these people running these organizations are corrupt. They are
Yes.
corrupt. And like, I want, as a peace loving hippie, I want everybody to be free and happy and call yourself whatever you want and ideally do whatever you want and, you know, whatever. I don't care. But what I do care about is when you're calling for the annihilation of a complete group of people and when you're speaking out of your butt. When you're speaking out of your butt, when you don't know what you're talking about. And it makes me upset because it's like, remember when back in the day, the telephone game where you would
Yes.
say something in somebody's
Yes.
ear and then it would go all the way around the circle and it would be a completely different thing that comes out?
Yes.
That is what the world feels like right now.
Yes.
Like, almost like everybody, like sometimes something says something, it gets taken, it gets twisted, then they say something else, and they say something else, and then they say something else, until it turns into, a fun chant or a slogan that then everybody repeats together, and they're like, oh, how great. But it's like they are missing the initial message. At the end of the telephone game, you would always say what the real thing was you said and how it
Yeah.
got twisted all the way around in the circle. Nobody's talking about how it really started. And so I just want to point out to this article that I am going to give you. Never again is now, because the Arab League was Hitler's best friend. And
I'm
their
not surprised.
common enemy is Jews, English, and the communists. And that all equals the Judeo-Christian values. That's
Yes.
how we got onto this, the Judeo-Christian values. And
That's what
so
people don't understand. So if you're Jewish, Catholic, Christian, if you're non-Muslim, from the river to the sea essentially does mean you. It does mean you. If you look at Osama bin Laden's manifesto, we talked about that a little bit earlier. He literally says it's Islam or nothing. You're with us or you're against us or you're annihilated. So I don't think people understand the severity of what is happening right now.
they don't. They don't understand, and they need to wake up. They need to wake up. They need to understand. And I want to point out something about October 7th. They killed Arabs. Hamas killed Israeli Arabs.
Yes.
It didn't matter if you were Jewish, Christian, Arab, Bedouin, Druze, Thai, Filipino, American, Russian, whatever ethnicity or country you originate from, it did not matter. As long as you were inside of Israel, you were meat. You were meat to them, and they wanted to slaughter every single person inside of Israel. And this is to your point about how everybody has to be Islam. It's not just Islam, it is jihadi.
Yes.
Even in
Extreme.
Arab countries, there are hundreds of thousands of other Arabs dying because they are not the proper Islam. So in
Yes.
Iran, that woman was killed because she didn't want to wear her burqa.
Right.
And in Palestine, West Bank, day 1, the first day of hostage prisoner release, 2 Palestinians were hung in the West Bank by other Palestinians. They were lynched for being supposed Israel supporters.
Oh, I saw that. They said they're spies or whatever. They have no proof.
Yes.
Yes, I
No,
saw that.
no proof. So, everybody wants to free Palestine, but free Palestine means complete global jihad and no judicial system, nothing to follow. There's not
Right.
like a real government. It's just mass anarchy and chaos, and they are killing their own people
Well, their
all
value.
all over the Arab worlds.
But what happens is, unfortunately, it boils down to how each culture values human life. Going back to the martyrdom and the, what is it, 14, 16 virgins, doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. When they go to heaven and so on, like they think they're going to heaven, that's rich. But that's what their belief is. And it's just so ridiculous. It just, that you're like, I'm just going to murder and rape all these people, but I'm going to go to heaven or go to wherever
Yeah.
where Allah is.
Yeah.
And it's the value of human life. And it kills me that the 1-to-3 ratio of the hostages to the prisoners were terrorists. And it kills me that, unfortunately, the Palestinians, when I say Palestinians, I mean Hamas, understand how much the Israelis and the US and America values human life. And that's what they're capitalizing on. It's extremely disconcerting because their attitude, let's just say the Hamas people are like, I'm cool. I'm just going to go to heaven no matter what I do. So that's something important to understand when people are looking at the conflict is it's not, they have to understand the value or the lack thereof of human life. which differs, like I just said, culturally from the Palestinians to the Israelis. And it's very upsetting for, well, Israel and everyone that cares, because they are, of course, it goes without saying, using the Israeli hostages, whether they're Thai, it doesn't matter, or Israeli, whatever, American, as pawns, and they're bargaining chips. So people don't
Yeah.
understand the history and all that, so they don't understand anything really of like, why are we even like doing the 1 to 3, like you mentioned, hope ratio? Why? Because any life is valuable, any person we get back is valuable. Hamas doesn't think that way, but guess what, they know the Israelis do.
Right. Well, just several years ago, we released over 1,000 prisoners for our one soldier, Gilad Shalit. It's a very famous situation. One of those prisoners, one out of the 1,000 that we released for Gilad Shalit, is Sinwar himself. And he is the mastermind behind the October 7th massacre. We gave him life-saving brain surgery while he was a prisoner in Israel. We treat our prisoners with decency and humanity and life-saving treatment in Israel. And we also, like recently and have always, brought children from Gaza who need help into our hospitals. Always. We always help save lives. And even now, to this day, during this conflict, the IDF is making sure they do everything they possibly can to help Gazans, civilians, get out of harm's way so they can dismantle Hamas. And the whole world has just completely lost their minds. They've lost their minds.
That's
And
why
they
the
don't know what they're
education,
talking about.
but that's why the only thing is to do is report, have a voice. When you see something, disinformation, I'm tired of that word, but it bears repeating because it applies to the situation. Report it. Like we said, the Hadid sisters, if you see that they're saying pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, incendiary comments, to call them out, but not just call it out, not just doing a tweet on X, but doing more. They have that petition now that the modeling agency drops them. We just need to do the most that we can, but this
Send
is not.
send that to me. Send that to me
Sure,
after this, and I'll
sure.
put it in here as well. I'm gonna put the
Yes,
article in here as well for people
yes.
to see. We're gonna give the information that we need to do for everybody, so we can all get into action mode. Get into action mode. Whatever it is that you can do is worth doing. So
Well, the other thing I just want to mention, as you probably already know, but I don't know how much your listeners know what is so important is, and I've been guilty of this too, trust me, since October 6th, 7th rather. So your first instinct is, oh my God, if I go to this event, there's going to be bloodshed or a problem or something. Now is not the time to cower. Now is not the time to be silent. You go to that event you don't want to go to. You go to the newspaper if you don't want to feel like writing the extra email. It's literally an hour out of your life or 30 minutes to compose an email and send it to the editor in chief. You have to do it. You cannot rely. This is not a time for complacency where, someone else will do it if I don't. You don't know that. You have no idea if they'll do that. So you have to be hyper vigilant, be aware of all your surroundings. And again, if you see something, say something.
I completely agree. We all need to stand up right now and do literally whatever we can. And it doesn't even have to be everything, right? I think some people are so overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. But if
Right.
everybody just does one thing, we can make some progress. So, um, everybody just pick one thing. just
Well,
just do
I'll give you
something.
an example. I'll give you an example. You need to
Yeah.
get Hanukkah presents, get them from Israel. If you're Catholic,
Oh, I
buy
love that.
products from Israel. But you can be Catholic and buy an Israeli painting. You can buy Israeli clothing, even if you're a Christian. Like, that's something that you can literally silently do. You can go to an Israeli restaurant tomorrow for lunch instead of going to another place. Like there's small things that impact the situation. I think everyone can make a difference.
I love that. No, that's really great advice. And that's some new advice we haven't heard yet on this podcast. So that's a great idea. I love that. Well, Stacy, thank you so much for joining me. Is there anything else that you want to touch on?
No, I just, if anyone wants to join the Facebook group, it's Never Again Is Now. I have a fun, nonpartisan, non denomination dinner group that has fun activities. We do Miami, Fort Lauderdale, called Algonquin Dinner Club. And I am Stacy Luxury on Instagram. If you want to connect in any way, you can send me a message.
Okay, Stacy, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And to everybody else, never again is now. So please say something, do something, get active, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. Thank you for having me.